They thought handcuffing me in front of the entire base would silence me. My own fiancé, the man I trusted with classified intel and my heart, stood there watching, smirking beside his new lover. But what they didn't know? I had evidence that would bring every single one of them to their knees. 10 minutes. That's all it took. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, hit that like button right now. And subscribe. Because what happens next will remind you that karma doesn't forget. Ever. My name is Delilah Crane, and 6 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I was a captain in military intelligence at Fort Redstone, 8 years into a career I'd bled for, decorated twice for excellence in service, and engaged to a man I believed was my future. You know that feeling when you think you've finally got life by the throat? When everything slots into place like puzzle pieces, and you can actually see the next 10 years mapped out ahead of you? That was me. I was so sure. So stupidly, blindly sure. Sterling Holt wasn't just my fiancé. He was Fort Redstone's golden boy, lieutenant colonel, charismatic as hell, ambitious in that way that makes everyone believe he's destined for stars on his shoulders one day. We met 3 years ago at a joint operations briefing. I was presenting intelligence analysis, and he was leading tactical strategy. After the meeting, he walked up to me and said, "You just made everyone in that room look like amateurs. Coffee?" I should have known then that charm like that comes with a price tag. But I didn't. I fell. Hard. We got engaged 6 months before everything fell apart. He proposed on the observation deck overlooking the base at sunset, the whole place bathed in gold light, and I swear I felt like the luckiest woman alive. We were planning a military wedding, talking about assignment requests so we could stay stationed together, dreaming about the life we'd build. He'd kiss my forehead every morning before PT and tell me I was his anchor, his constant. The one thing in this chaotic military life that made sense. I worked in classified intelligence, top-level security clearance, handling reports that could shift international relations if they fell into the wrong hands. It was intense, isolating work. You can't talk about your day over dinner. You can't vent to friends. The only person I could really share the weight with was Sterling, and even then, only in broad strokes. But he understood. He was military through and through. He got the pressure, the sleepless nights, the burden of carrying secrets that could get people killed if mishandled. Looking back now, I can see all the signs I ignored. The late nights that stretched longer and longer. The way he started being vague about where he'd been, who he'd been with. Those phone calls he'd step outside to take, coming back in with excuses about mission planning or logistics headaches. I'd feel this tiny twist in my gut, that whisper of intuition telling me something was off, but I'd shove it down. I'd tell myself I was being paranoid. That military life is stressful and relationships require trust. That Sterling loved me, and I needed to stop looking for problems where there weren't any. God, I was such a fool. It started small. Little cracks in the foundation I didn't notice until the whole structure came crashing down. Sterling started requesting files from my department, intelligence reports, security assessments, nothing that seemed suspicious at first, because he had clearance for some crossover work. But it was more frequent than usual. When I'd ask why he needed them, he'd give me these easy smiles and say, "Just covering my bases for the new operation. You know how Voss is about thoroughness." General Thaddeus Voss was his mentor, the base commander, and Sterling worshipped him. So I didn't question it. I handed over what he needed and went back to my own work, trusting him completely. That trust was the knife I'd eventually feel in my back. The first crack appeared 3 months before the handcuffs. I was leaving the intelligence building after a 14-hour shift, exhausted, ready to collapse into bed, when I saw Sterling across the quad. He wasn't alone. Major Sienna Vale was with him, and they were standing close. Too close. The kind of close that makes your stomach drop even when your brain is trying to rationalize it away. Sienna was logistics, beautiful in that effortless way some women are, sharp-eyed, always impeccably put together, even in fatigues. I'd seen her around, but never paid much attention. Now I couldn't stop watching as she laughed at something Sterling said, her hand briefly touching his arm. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, but those 3 seconds burned themselves into my memory. Sterling saw me watching. For just a moment, something flickered across his face. Then he smiled and waved like nothing was wrong. That night, I asked him about it. Casual? Light. "Who was that woman you were talking to today?" He barely looked up from his laptop. "Sienna? She's logistics. We're coordinating supply chains for the upcoming operation. Why?" I heard the edge in his voice, that slight defensiveness. "No reason, just curious." He closed his laptop then, looked at me with this patient expression that made me feel small. "Delilah, she's a colleague. Don't be paranoid. You know how much pressure I'm under right now." Paranoid. That word stuck in my throat like glass. I wasn't paranoid. I was observant. But he said it with such certainty that I started doubting myself. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the stress was getting to me. Maybe I was looking for problems because work was intense and I was tired and my anxiety was running wild. So I apologized. I actually apologized for asking a simple question about why my fiancé was standing intimately close to another woman. The meetings with Sienna continued. I'd see them together constantly, grabbing coffee, walking the perimeter, huddled over tablets in the mess hall. Every time I brought it up, Sterling had an answer. "It's work, babe. You understand work." And I did understand work. That was the problem. I understood it so well that I let him use it as a shield for 3 solid months while he carried on right in front of me. Then I found the messages. It was an accident, or maybe fate finally throwing me a bone. Sterling left his phone on the bathroom counter while he showered. It buzzed. I glanced at it, and the preview made my blood run cold. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear that thing I like," from Sienna. My hands were shaking when I unlocked his phone. He never changed his passcode from our anniversary date. The irony would have been funny if my heart wasn't shattering. Weeks of messages, flirty, intimate, plans to meet, inside jokes, pet names. I scrolled through them, feeling like I was watching my life disintegrate in real time. There were messages from nights he told me he was working late. From mornings, he left early for briefings. From afternoons, he said he was in meetings I couldn't attend because of security clearances. All lies. Every single one. When Sterling got out of the shower, I was waiting. I threw the phone at him. Actually threw it. "What the hell is this?" He caught it, looked at the screen, and his face went hard. Not guilty, not apologetic. Hard. "You went through my phone?" His voice was ice. "That's what you're concerned about? That I went through your phone? Sterling, you're cheating on me." My voice cracked on the last word, all that rage and heartbreak exploding out of me at once. He didn't deny it. That's what killed me. He didn't even try. Instead, he went on the offensive. "You have no idea what you're talking about. Those messages are taken out of context. Sienna and I are friends. You're being controlling and jealous, and honestly, Delilah, it's exhausting." Gaslighting. He was gaslighting me while the evidence was right there in his hand. I lost it. Completely lost it. We screamed at each other for 20 minutes, me demanding the truth, him deflecting and twisting everything back on me. Finally, something in me snapped. I slapped him, hard, across the face. The sound echoed in our apartment like a gunshot. The silence that followed was worse than the shouting. Sterling touched his cheek, and when he looked at me, his eyes were dead. "You just assaulted a superior officer," he said quietly. "I could ruin you for that. End your career with one report. Is that what you want?" It wasn't a question, it was a threat. "Back off, Delilah, or you'll lose everything." I should have seen it then. The real Sterling finally showing himself. But all I felt was terror. For my career, my future, everything I'd worked for. So I backed off. And that hesitation, that fear, it nearly destroyed me. I backed off, but I didn't stop watching. Couldn't. Something gnawed at me, kept me awake at night, staring at the ceiling, while Sterling slept peacefully beside me, like he hadn't just threatened to destroy my career. During the day, I started paying attention to the files he'd been requesting from my department. At first, it seemed routine. Then, I noticed a pattern. Sterling was accessing intelligence reports he had no operational need for, strategic assessments, foreign contractor databases, security vulnerability analyses, information that shouldn't have left my department, let alone crossed his desk. I started digging, quietly, carefully. I pulled access logs, cross-referenced them with his official assignment parameters, and my stomach turned to lead. Sterling had been systematically extracting classified intelligence for 8 months, information valuable enough to sell, dangerous enough to get people killed. Then I found the financial records. I shouldn't have had access to his bank accounts, but he'd added me as a joint holder when we got engaged. What's mine is yours, babe. We're a team. Another lie wrapped in a promise. His account showed deposits that didn't match his military salary. Large deposits, regular deposits, 50,000 here, 75,000 there, all from an offshore LLC I'd never heard of. I felt sick. This wasn't just an affair. Sterling was a traitor. And Sienna, I pulled her financials too, using access I probably shouldn't have used, but I was past caring about protocols. Her accounts showed the same pattern, identical deposits from the same LLC. They weren't just sleeping together. They were selling classified intelligence together, profiting off treason while wearing the uniform. I had to see it for myself, had to confirm what my gut was screaming. I followed them one Friday night when Sterling told me he had a late briefing with General Voss. Watched him drive not to the command building, but to the Riverside Hotel 30 miles off base. Watch Sienna pull up 10 minutes later. Watch them meet in the parking lot, kissing like they had every right to, like I didn't exist, like our engagement ring wasn't still on my finger. They went inside. Room 214. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, shaking, crying, rage and heartbreak warring in my chest. Through the window, I could see them. Champagne, laughter. Sterling pulled Sienna close, and she wrapped herself around him with the ease of routine, of familiarity, of something that had been going on far longer than 3 months. They were celebrating. I later found out why. They just closed a $2 million deal selling strategic defense intelligence to foreign contractors. The man I loved was a cheater and a traitor, and I was the idiot who'd trusted him with everything. I went home, didn't confront them, didn't scream or cry or fall apart. Instead, I did what I was trained to do. I gathered evidence, every file Sterling had accessed, every suspicious transaction, every message I could recover, every meeting logged. I documented everything, encrypted it, backed it up in 3 separate secure locations. Then, I sent copies to the one person I knew I could trust, Captain Rhett Caldwell, my former partner from JAG. If anything happened to me, Rhett would know what to do with it. I thought I was being careful. I thought I'd covered my tracks. But Sterling was smarter than I gave him credit for, or maybe just more ruthless. Because 2 days later, I woke up to military police pounding on my door at 0500 hours. They stormed my quarters like I was a terrorist, tore through my things, seized my computer, my files, my phone. The lead investigator read me my rights while I stood there in my sleep clothes, confused and terrified. Captain Crane, you're under arrest for unauthorized disclosure of classified intelligence and espionage. My brain couldn't process it. Espionage? Me? There's been a mistake. No mistake, Captain. We have evidence you've been leaking classified reports to foreign entities. You're coming with us. They handcuffed me. Right there in my own quarters. Cold metal biting into my wrists. Then they walked me out. Not quietly, not discreetly. They walked me out during morning formation, when the entire base was assembled on the quad. 800 soldiers watching as I was paraded past them in handcuffs like a criminal, like a traitor, like everything I'd fought against my entire career. And there, standing on the command building steps, were Sterling and Sienna, watching. He had his arms crossed, face impassive. She was barely hiding a smile. General Voss stood beside them, overseeing my public humiliation personally. This was deliberate. This was theater. They wanted everyone to see me fall. I locked eyes with Sterling as they pushed me past. "How could you?" I choked out. My voice broke. I hated that it broke, hated giving him the satisfaction. He looked at me like I was nothing, like 3 years meant nothing. like I was an inconvenience finally being disposed of. "You should have minded your own business, Delilah," he said coldly. That's when I understood. He'd set me up, planted evidence, used his access and his rank to frame me for his own crimes. And I was supposed to take the fall while he and Sienna walked away rich and free. They threw me in an interrogation room and left me there, alone, handcuffed to a table, my career destroyed, my reputation shattered, my life over. At least, that's what they thought. I sat in that interrogation room for 9 minutes. 9 minutes of silence while they waited for me to break, to confess, to give them whatever narrative Sterling had prepared for me to follow. Two investigators sat across from me, files spread out, showing me bank statements they claimed were mine, communications they said proved I'd sold secrets, all fabricated, all perfectly, meticulously fabricated. "Captain Crane, this will go easier if you cooperate," the lead investigator said. He almost sounded sympathetic. Almost. "The evidence is overwhelming. Multiple transactions, classified files found on your personal devices, communications with known foreign operatives. Just tell us why you did it." I didn't say a word, didn't defend myself, didn't cry or beg or protest my innocence. I just sat there, handcuffed, staring at the table, counting seconds in my head. Because I knew something they didn't. I knew exactly what was happening outside that room at that very moment. I'd set everything in motion the second I sent those files to Rhett. All I had to do was wait. 60 seconds left. The investigators were getting frustrated. One of them slammed his hand on the table. "Captain, your silence isn't helping you. We have you dead to rights. The only question is whether you cooperate now or spend the rest of your life in Leavenworth." 45 seconds. I looked up at him, made eye contact, didn't say a single word. 30 seconds. The door behind them was solid steel, soundproof, but I swear I could feel the chaos starting to unfold on the other side. 15 seconds. The lead investigator opened his mouth to speak again. The door exploded open, not metaphorically. It actually slammed open so hard it hit the wall. Captain Rhett Caldwell stood there, jaw tight, federal investigation badges behind him, and behind them, the Inspector General himself. "This interrogation is over," Rhett said. His voice could have cut glass. "Uncuff her, now." The investigators looked confused, shocked. "We have authority." "You have nothing," the Inspector General interrupted. "Captain Crane is not your suspect. She's your witness. Remove those handcuffs immediately, or I'll have both of you brought up on charges for unlawful detention." The handcuffs came off. My wrists were raw, red grooves where the metal had bitten in. Rhett handed me a bottle of water, and I finally let myself breathe. "It's done," he said quietly. "We got all of them." While I'd been sitting in that interrogation room, federal investigators had executed simultaneous raids across Fort Redstone, Sterling's office, Sienna's quarters, General Voss's home, two other generals who'd been part of the intelligence-selling ring. They seized computers, files, offshore account records, burner phones, everything. 8 months of treason documented in excruciating detail, and now it was all in federal hands. Sterling had been in his office when they came for him. I heard later that he actually tried to run, made it as far as the hallway before military police tackled him to the ground. They found him with a laptop open, mid-transaction, trying to move money out of his offshore accounts. Caught absolutely red-handed. Sienna was at the base gym, tried to play innocent, crying, claiming she didn't know what they were talking about. Until they showed her the bank statements with her name on them, the emails in her handwriting, the recordings of her negotiating prices with foreign buyers. She crumbled, started screaming that it was all Sterling's idea, that he'd forced her, manipulated her. Nobody believed her. General Voss was the one who shocked me most. The base commander, Sterling's mentor, the man everyone respected and feared in equal measure. Turned out he'd been the architect of the whole operation. He'd recruited Sterling 2 years ago, built the network, facilitated the leaks. When they arrested him at his home, they found $7 million in assets purchased with blood money. $7 million earned by selling American intelligence that got operatives killed, compromised missions, endangered lives. They brought Sterling out in handcuffs, paraded him across the same quad where I'd been humiliated just 10 minutes earlier. The entire base was still assembled, still watching, and now they were watching Fort Redstone's golden boy fall from grace in real time. I was standing on the command building steps, right where he'd stood when they arrested me. The symmetry was almost poetic. Sterling saw me. Our eyes locked, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw fear in his face. Real, raw, desperate fear. "Delilah!" he called out as they dragged him past. "Delilah, please. I can explain. This isn't what it looks like. I was going to come clean. I was trying to protect you." I walked down those steps slowly, deliberately. Let him see me approaching. Let him hope, just for a second, that I might actually listen, might actually care. I stopped right in front of him, close enough to see the panic in his eyes, the sweat on his forehead, the complete destruction of everything he'd built on lies. "You already explained," I said. My voice was ice, calm, controlled, everything he'd tried to take from me. "When you put these handcuffs on me." Then I walked away, didn't look back, didn't give him another second of my time, or energy, or emotion. Behind me, I heard him shouting my name, begging, the desperation in his voice almost satisfying. Almost. But I was done. Completely done. They thought they'd broken me, buried me, silenced me. They had no idea they'd awakened something far more dangerous than anger or revenge. They'd awakened the truth. And the truth doesn't negotiate, doesn't compromise, doesn't forgive. It just wins. The trials took 3 months. 3 months of watching Sterling, Sienna, General Voss, and 2 other generals sit in a military courtroom while their entire lives were dissected in front of judges, prosecutors, and the media. It became national news. Fort Redstone Treason Ring was the headline on every military publication, every news channel. Senators called for investigations. The Pentagon launched internal reviews. And I was at the center of it all, not as the accused, but as the witness who'd brought them down. I testified for 6 hours, walked the court through every piece of evidence I'd gathered, every file Sterling had accessed, every transaction, every lie. The prosecutors called me a hero. Sterling's defense attorney called me a vindictive ex-fiancé with an axe to grind. The judges saw through it. Everyone saw through it. The evidence didn't lie, even if Sterling had. The sentences came down like hammers. General Voss got 25 years in military prison, dishonorable discharge, complete forfeiture of rank and pension. The 2 other generals got 20 years each. Their legacies destroyed. Their families shattered. Careers that spanned decades erased in an afternoon. Sterling got 22 years. Dishonorable discharge. All assets seized, including the $2 million he'd hidden offshore. When they read his sentence, he dropped his head into his hands. I watched him cry, and I felt nothing, not satisfaction, not pity, nothing. He'd cried fake tears too many times for me to believe anything about him anymore. Sienna got 15 years, lighter sentence because she cooperated. And that cooperation? That's where the real karma came in. During her testimony, Sienna didn't just cooperate, she eviscerated Sterling, threw him completely under the bus to save herself. She claimed he'd manipulated her, groomed her, threatened her career if she didn't participate, said he was the mastermind, that she was just following orders from a superior officer she was too afraid to refuse. She painted herself as his victim, his pawn, a woman coerced into treason by a man who abused his power and authority. Some of it was lies. Most of it was lies. But enough of it was true that the prosecutors believed her, or at least pretended to. She turned state's witness, gave them everything on Sterling, and walked away with 7 years knocked off her sentence. And Sterling? Sterling sat there listening to the woman he'd destroyed his life for systematically destroy him right back, watching her save herself by sacrificing him the exact same way he'd tried to sacrifice me. The irony was almost too perfect. He'd betrayed me for her, and she betrayed him for a lighter sentence. The woman he'd chosen over me, the woman he'd risked everything for, didn't love him. Probably never did. She'd used him exactly the way he'd used me, except she was better at it. After sentencing, I got a promotion, captain to major, commendation for integrity and service, job offers from 3 different intelligence agencies. My career didn't just survive, it thrived. Everything Sterling tried to take from me, I got back tenfold. 2 months after the trials ended, I received a letter. Prison mail, from Sterling. I recognized his handwriting on the envelope immediately. For a moment, I just stared at it, feeling that old familiar twist in my stomach. Then I opened it. 6 pages, front and back. Desperation bleeding through every word. He was sorry. He'd made terrible mistakes. Sienna had manipulated him, seduced him, convinced him the intelligence selling was victimless. He'd been weak, stupid, blinded by ambition and lust. But he'd never stopped loving me. Never. I was the only real thing in his life, and losing me was worse than losing his freedom. If I could find it in my heart to forgive him, maybe write back, maybe visit, maybe... I didn't finish reading. Couldn't. Not because it hurt, because it was pathetic. This man who'd threatened me, betrayed me, tried to frame me for his crimes, now wanted my forgiveness, my comfort, my absolution for the hell he'd put me through. I walked to my kitchen, turned on the stove, and watched Sterling's letter burn. Every page, every word, every desperate plea. I watched it turn to ash, and when it was gone, I felt lighter than I had in months. Freer. Like I'd finally cut the last thread tying me to that chapter of my life. A week later, I accepted a position at the Defense Intelligence Agency in Washington. New city, new assignment, new life. I packed up my things, said goodbye to Fort Redstone, and drove away without looking back. Sterling wrote 3 more letters. I burned them all unopened. He didn't deserve my words, didn't deserve my time, didn't deserve a single second more of my life. Some people say revenge is a dish best served cold. I say justice is even better served with evidence. Sterling thought handcuffing me would end my story, but it was just the beginning of his ending. And honestly, that's the sweetest ending I could have asked for. Here's what I learned through the worst betrayal of my life. The people who try to bury you don't realize you might be a seed. Sterling thought handcuffing me would end my story, but it was just the beginning of his ending. Betrayal is temporary, integrity is forever. And the truth? The truth doesn't need you to defend it. It will defend itself. To everyone watching this who's been betrayed, lied to, cheated on, your time is coming. Not because you need revenge, but because the universe has a way of balancing its books. Stay strong, stay honest, and never ever let someone dim your light to make theirs shine brighter. If this story reminded you that karma is real, smash that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe, because I'm bringing you more stories of betrayal, justice, and the satisfaction of watching the truth win. See you in the next one.